a special guest on the programme, do we not? Apart from which, clearly. But we talked about this subject last Friday.
We did indeed.
And just remind us what the subject is again.
Well, this is a vinyl LP. Again, I have it in my hand, by the Courtyard music group, who, for those that weren't listening last Friday, were a group of people who were at school in Scotland, and their woodwork teacher thought it would be a jolly good idea to have a go at making a record, which they duly did. And the thing with this record is it's become a very valuable collector's item, selling on the collector's market in excess of £1,000 a copy, because they only made 100 of them. Oh. And then a gentleman who I do believe we're about to speak to had the rather fortunate idea of remaking this package.
Here's the aforementioned gentleman, Stephen Bateman. Hello, Stephen Bateman, how are you?
Hello, Vic. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. What a fantastic project. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, was it as simple as the fact that you thought, well, do you know what, let's reissue the record, simple as that?
Yeah, it hasn't been simple, but it was driven by the fact that there was a lot of demand for it and that there was very limited supply, and it felt unfair that a lot of people couldn't get it unless they had £1,000, and even then, I mean, they've sold for £2,000. So, I think when Stephen Dalton wrote the article, that was kind of the average price, but they fetch a lot more, actually.
I mean, you would never in your wildest dreams thought that would happen, would you?
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, I think, the project had absolutely no commercial, agenda to it at all. It was, purely done as a school project, and it was done, for the benefit of the school, really. And this, for me, was giving back to the school. The project itself hasn't really made any money. It's just about washed its hands.
Incredible. And what a talented bunch of musicians. I mean, were you aware how talented you were when you put it all together?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of the band, some of the bands were very musical, and others, had to, learn their parts. And when they played recently after not having met up for 40 years, it was the same again. Some of them were straight into it. They play regularly every week, and others, don't perform at all, and had to, work on Skype and listen to the CD again and do lots of practice. It's kind of, half a dozen of one and a very different half a dozen of the other, really.
We're trying to we likened it, didn't we, Matthew, to sort of Fairport Convention people like that. I mean, it was that sort of style, wasn't it?
I think that's interesting, because I think one of the things that happened to Fairport Convention was after the tragic accident, they actually ended up being together in a mansion, on a property, very intimately for a long time. And I think a lot of the genius of music comes out in those moments. The Rolling Stones had similar times. And, when you can lock yourself away like that and be remote and detached from everything else, you can really kind of get to know one another really well. And I think that, that's what it's all about, really. I think that there are, very interesting comparisons to draw. Killy was a school of 50 pupils, no more, probably about 13, 14 teachers. Everybody was on first names, everything was decided in council meetings. Everybody would say it was kind of hippie, but actually, it was just a great way to live. And I think that, that intimacy between Richard and the group and the members of the group allowed this, amazing project to happen. And, you've got jams, on that record that are totally, natural, totally spontaneous.
One thing that pleased you, Matthew, was the packaging, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen an original copy of this album, but the fact, you get a very nice informative book. Yeah. You've got this poster that kind of folds out with a load of handwritten sort of sleeve notes, and the reproduction handwritten lyric sheet. I mean, I assume these were all in the original packaging, and these are sort of facsimiles of what was originally on with the album.
That's totally right, Matthew, and I'm indebted to you. You're a great advocate of this record, and I love the way you introduced it on Vic's show and brought it to the attention of the listeners here. I think, the Annie Bickerstaff, who was in charge of the art, really, and was responsible for also, ensuring that the facsimiles would come out on the same sort of parchment as they were originally done. They were silk-screened. Everything was silk-screened. In fact, this whole project was due to come out before Christmas in 1974 and ended up being actually ready in about February 1975. The delays were all to do with the fact that the handcrafted material took a lot longer than they thought. This time round, what was difficult, but we managed it, sourcing in Somerset, everything was locally sourced here, was able to find a printer that could actually find the parchments, because none of these are kind of standard size.
No, they're not.
It's done on kind of laser copiers these days, and none of this is. So, it was great to find artisans that could actually, help us out there.
But that, of course, was very much central to the whole project, wasn't it? I mean, it's kind of... it's so beautifully put together. How long did it actually do this, to take this process?
A whole year. It all started off with me informing the band that this would be a project and getting everybody on board. Obviously, there was some trepidation at first, but the enthusiasm grew very quickly. And then, when all 9 members of the band had been, contacted and were on board with it, it was a case of just interviewing them, sort of, in groups of 2 or 3 over Skype, because I'm based in Exeter and people are up in Scotland and Warwick and Wales and London and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of Skype. Modern technology helps us a lot because we're very scattered all over the place. And from those interviews, I then transcribed them. And it was an easier process doing it that way around. But it was gathering all of that anecdotal memory, and then Richard had fortunately stored both the tapes and bits and bobs like, the original lyric sheets with, Frank's lyrics on them and that kind of stuff. So we were able to go back to those, obviously, and bring them into the project. But there's not much photography from that time. There's a bit, but not very much. Then the BBC had some archive material that they'd done, about the school. That was in kind of 68, so it was a bit earlier, but it gave the flavour. So, it was all done from our own memories of having, been at the school. And it was a celebration of 75 years of the school. That's partly why also it tied in with August, because that was the 75th anniversary.
Well, bear with us then. We're going to play a track from this now, Matthew, aren't we?
Yeah.
What's this one?
This one's called... now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly or not, but I read it as Anti-Glock Shoppy.
Yeah, the anti-Glock shop. Yeah,
Anti-Glock shop,
absolutely.
right.
I think shoppy is the old word for shop, but yeah, you're not far off there, Matthew. Yeah, it's a great tune. It's very bluesy.
All right, well, let's have a listen to it then.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Anti-Glock Shot from the Courtyard Musical Group. That is just wonderful, Stephen. I mean, what a great feel to that piece of music.
It is, and that's a wonderful choice. I think, I think each of the, players comes out of that really well. Obviously, Frank leading on the glockenspiel, and you've got Cheryl on the violin, and lovely recorders. And also it combines different genres, and it kind of has, lovely changes of rhythm. It reminds me a lot of the kind of Scottish country dancing that we did every week, really. It's kind of got that vibe.
Yeah, what I really liked about that song is, it's played with all acoustic instruments, but then in the middle you've got an electric guitar solo, which is great.
It's fantastic.
Fergie's the most beautiful plucker, isn't he? There's a much longer tune. I know you couldn't play it because it's too long. It's about 13 minutes long.
Oh yeah, the jam on the side too. Yeah.
His plucking is just gorgeous. Yeah.
This was all done in one barn, was it? Is that basically the bottom line?
A bedroom. So Richard, who's the work teacher, had a room in the courtyard, and that became obviously the studio. For 2 weeks, that was converted into a recording studio with some basic setup. Matt Negus, who passed, unfortunately, who was a young engineer on the project, he'd have been a bit older than me, maybe 16, 17. He was set up out in the corridor, and the musicians were so like in a kind of traditional setup, but it was all homemade, and they put blankets up around the walls and kind of had to dampen the acoustics a bit. Borrowed a few mics and so on and so forth from Lauriston Hall, where I think some of the members of one of the bands at the time, I think it might have been I'll Come Back to Me, but a lot of the material was kind of borrowed.
Extraordinary. And
string band.
Is the school still going, Stephen?
Yeah, it is, but it's become a children's village, and it's actually owned by a Japanese entrepreneur who brings groups of Japanese children over for a completely different educational experience, because it's the complete antithesis. The Japanese system is very sort of strict, or at least very straitjacketed, let's say, and this is kind of the opposite. It's a free environment.
Do any of the Japanese students ever get to make a vinyl LP though while they're over here?
No, they get to make other things though. It's still very, very creative.
Now, I've got to ask you one question. Is the record still available? Because this was a limited edition rerun, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, we did 300. A few people are contacting us through the Facebook page to reserve copies, but there's only a very few left. There's a few CDs left, but pretty much, it was exhausted pretty much, which is great. The campaign really started in January, went through till about August. I think we closed it on the 1st of August, even before the BBC One show did the feature. And that's just because, it was limited, and we always said we'd just do that 300 and there won't be any more. There's some demand for the 1973 album called Kiddie Country, which is even rarer. Only 60 of those were done. They're very difficult to get hold of. That may be a future project, but it's a lot of work. It's a labour of love, but frankly, it was probably, for me at least, a year's work, probably 3 or 4 hours a day, and I've got a job I have to do to pay the bills. So it's a lot of overtime basically, but worth it, I think.
Yes, no, it's a fantastic product, and just out of interest, that the second album you mentioned, were the same musicians on that, or was it like a different generation of musicians?
So really, the music in Kiddie came out of theatre, because there was quite a bit of theatre, and it needed some musical accompaniment. And the first group in 1973 did have a few of the musicians from, that followed through into the second, but only a few. And I think, if you think about it, things like Song for Claire that you played last week, for instance, Claire would have been in the first band. But that's Claire Atkinson. So she was American, and she ended up, leaving, going to live in Paris, I think, where she still is. And so there wasn't a massive continuity. Richard would have been the main continuity. But then the two records are quite dissimilar, really. I mean, this one's more accomplished. I don't know if you know Richard Falk, but he's he's written quite a bit about these two albums and has rated them and so on and so forth. And he rates this one slightly more, higher than the first one. I think he's right. The first one's got one really good standout tune on it. But I think overall this one is more accomplished, it's more finished.
Well, it's certainly a fantastic project, and it's also very nice to know that it's got very much a local connection as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great. I'm glad you picked up on it, really. It's been fantastic. Thanks so much.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much indeed, and I've put my name to get one if that's possible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I will get one to you. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to speak to you, Stephen, and I wish you all the very best for future projects. Absolutely fantastic. So many congratulations on
Thanks, Vic. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you. All the very best to you.
Yeah.
Stephen Bateman. Wow, brilliant.
Right. Well, from something from a